The cafe tilde copyright was quiet except for the soft hum of the espresso machine. David Carter, a single dad in his late 30s, sat at a corner table, laptop open, half-eaten muffin pushed to the side. He was a freelance translator of French, Spanish, a bit of German, anything to keep the bills paid and the lights on for his 9-year-old daughter, Sophie. He had just finished his last paid project of the week and was calculating, with a sinking feeling, whether he could stretch his remaining $48 until his next client paid up. Sophie needed new shoes for school, and his old truck had been making that worrying cough again. That's when he walked in. Tall, sharp suit, silver cufflinks glinting in the light. Michael Hawthorne, billionaire CEO of Hawthorne International. The man was the definition of power and money. People whispered his name as if saying it too loudly would bring him over. He scanned the room, then made a beeline straight to David's table. "You speak French?" Michael asked without introduction. David nodded, very fluently. "Why?" Michael placed a thick envelope on the table. "Translate this for me right now, and if you get it right, I'll double your pay." David blinked. "Double what pay? I don't work for you." "You do now," Michael said, pulling up a chair. "And time is money. I need this in English in the next 30 minutes. The challenge." David opened the envelope. It wasn't just a single page up, it was 10, each covered in dense, looping handwriting. But it wasn't business jargon or contracts, it was deeply personal. Letters, in careful French. Someone had written about war, about loss, about waiting decades for an answer that never came. The words trembled with longing and heartbreak, and at the bottom of each letter broken bar the same signature, Claire. David looked up. "Who's Claire?" Michael's jaw tightened. "My mother. She died last year." These were found in an old storage unit in Paris. A broken bar. I never knew they existed. David's hands stilled. "Do you want me to translate them word for word, a broken bar, or with the feeling she wrote them?" Michael hesitated. Then, for the first time, the CEO's hard mask cracked. "Feeling, please." The breakthrough. David worked quietly, speaking the words aloud as he translated so Michael could hear them in real time. The first letter was from 1985, written to a man named Robert. Claire wrote about a child she had to give up for adoption when she was young, about how she prayed every day he was safe, loved, and cared for. By the second letter, David's voice was trembling. Claire spoke of sending Christmas cards to an address that always came back undeliverable. She wondered if her son knew she existed. By the fifth letter, Michael's eyes were glassy. His hand, which had been resting on the table, was now clenched into a fist. David finally asked, "Michaela Broken Bar, was Robert your father?" Michael swallowed. "Number." "Roberta Broken Bar was my adopted father's name." The truth hung heavy between them. The twist. As David translated the final page, his voice cracked. Claire had written it just a month before her death. She had finally learned where her son was, but she decided not to contact him, fearing he would reject her. She ended with, "If by some miracle you read this one day, I want you to know, a broken bar, I loved you from the start, and I never stopped." Michael's head was bowed. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. "All my life, a broken bar, I thought she didn't want me. Turns out, she spent her whole life loving me from a distance. The act of kindness." David gently closed the final page. "Michaela Broken Bar, these aren't just letters, they're her heart." "You didn't just get a translation, you got her voice back." Michael sat in silence for a moment, then reached into his jacket and pulled out a checkbook. "Name your price." "I said I'd double it, but after these a broken bar triple." David shook his head. "I don't want your money." Michael frowned. "Why not?" "Because I know what it's like to want your child to understand how much you love them," David said quietly. "So for my daughter, she's all I have. If she ever found my words one day, I'd hope someone would do for her what I just did for you." Michael stared at him, then slowly tore the check in half. Instead, he pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. "You're wasted on small freelance gigs. Come work for me full salary, benefits, a broken bar, and enough stability so Sophie never has to wonder how the bills will get paid." The ending. 3 months later, David and Sophie were living in a modest but warm apartment close to her new school. He had a steady job as Michael's personal translator and archivist, tasked with sorting through Claire's journals and letters. One afternoon, As David handed Michael another translated entry, Michael smiled faintly. "You know, a broken bar." She mentioned Robert in almost every letter. "Turns out, that was my middle name. She was writing to me all along." David grinned. "Then I guess she always knew where her words would end up." The two men stood in the quiet office, bound now not by a business deal but by the shared understanding of her parents' love. And in that moment, David knew sometimes the greatest payment you can receive isn't money. It's knowing you helped someone find their way home. Michael's gaze lingered on the letters spread across his desk. His fingers traced the faded ink, as if touching them.